4 types of repercussions to anger in your marriage with solutions offered. Hi friends, welcome to Marriage Realities, a comprehensive relationship channel. This video is all about the different types of hurt the anger of your spouse creates in you. I met my friend Renu after a long time in a mall. As we were talking, my friend suddenly blurted out, "I hate my husband." I was naturally taken aback as I had always assumed that she was enjoying a happy marriage. "What happened, Renu?" I asked my friend hesitatingly. "Well, my husband has a ferocious temperament. And when he gets angry, he becomes so abusive that he tramples my self-respect by his hurting words. Nowadays, I've stopped talking to my husband as I cannot take it any longer," my friend sighed unhappily. "This is making my husband even angrier with me. But I cannot be bothered," my friend looked grim. "Our marriage survives only for the sake of our children." Tears of self-pity appeared in Renu's eyes. Can you see how the anger of her husband made my friend hate him? I'm sure my friend is not a lone case in feeling so. When there are needless display of anger, many couples undergo the same agony as my friend. The hurt you feel when your spouse is unreasonably angry with you is so massive that you feel you can never forgive him or her ever in your life. Continuous anger of your spouse makes you drift away from him or her in resentment and bitterness. When your spouse constantly loses his or her temper, you're unable to enjoy your married life. Marriage is an emotional and sensitive relationship you share with your spouse. You had so many dreams about your spouse before your marriage. You had always dreamily imagined that your spouse would cherish you all through your relationship. But when your spouse thrashes your dreams by demeaning your self-respect, you feel deeply hurt. You find it easy to forgive your spouse when his or her anger is fleeting and temporary. But when the anger of your spouse is intentional and deliberate, you do not want to continue a relationship with him or her. Do you know the common reason behind many failed marriages? It is uncontrolled anger. The impact of anger in marriage is that much monumental that it shreds your relationship into pieces. Here are the shattering effects of hurt you feel when your spouse displays violent anger against you. The number 1 intense anger you feel when your spouse is angry is feeling ill-treated. When your spouse vents his or her frustrations on you, your mind revolts against it. You become resentful against your spouse because you feel you have done nothing wrong to warrant his or her needless anger. Consistent display of anger by your spouse makes you feel you're being misused and ill-treated by him or her. The number 2 intense hurt you feel when your spouse is angry is the feeling of your self-respect being thrashed. Though you're married, you have your own share of self-respect. The self-respect in you finds it impossible to tolerate the harsh words spoken by your spouse. There are times you instantly retaliate back to the anger of your spouse. There are times you keep silent, not wanting a confrontation with your spouse. But you in no way forgive your spouse. You store tons of resentment against your spouse for his or her uncalled for display of anger against you. Number 3 hurt you feel when your spouse is angry is stop loving him or her. When you're consistently exposed to the anger of your spouse, your respect for him or her diminishes. You easily forgive the occasional display of anger by your spouse. But when the anger of your spouse becomes frequent, you feel you're being taken for granted by him or her. Gradually, you start losing the love you have for your spouse. The number 4 impact of hurt you feel when your spouse is angry is wanting to stay away from him or her. The success of your marriage depends upon the quality time you spend together. But the persistent anger of your spouse makes you very unhappy and miserable. You're hurt that your spouse has made you a punching bag to vent his or her frustrations and disappointments on you. The hurt you feel is so much that you no longer want to spend time with your spouse. You would rather spend your time alone, away from your spouse. This is a danger signal to your marriage. Unless your spouse makes amendments to the bitterness his or her anger created in you, it might spell doom to your marriage. What exactly should both do to forego needless anger in your marriage? You should become empathetic. Both should be empathetic towards each other. When both are empathetic, you understand the feelings and emotions of each other much better. Realize the repercussions of anger in your marriage. Both will never show needless anger if you know its devastating impact in your relationship. Anger destroys the love you have for each other. Your relationship turns abusive and offensive. Both feel resentful against each other, so avoid venomous display of anger in your married life. Forgo your dreamy expectations. Both feel angry against each other because of your crash expectations. Mostly your spouse never lives up to your expectations and you too never live up to his or her expectations. When the expectations of both are not realized, it's only natural that both feel disappointed in your married life. The disappointments both feel against each other makes you also frustrated. And finally, the frustrations of both makes you flare up with needless anger against each other. So both must forgo your expectations if you must forgo anger against each other. Both should share your emotions. When both are unable to share your emotions with each other, both feel suffocated and oppressed in your relationship. So always be open to share your feelings with each other. When you do not like something which your spouse does, convey your feelings to him or her. It is because pent-up emotions inevitably end in volcanic display of anger. Move away from the scene of anger. When you feel you're going to erupt with anger, you must move away from your spouse. Never stay in the scene of your anger. If you do so, your anger becomes even more volatile and you continue fighting with your spouse. But when you move away from the scene of your anger, your temper easily cools down to normalcy. Always mind your words. Unthinking words uttered have the impact of a sword. It tears your relationship into shreds. So, both should control the bitter words waiting to erupt from you. You're not going to gain anything by uttering bitter words against each other. Your spouse is not your enemy that you should go all out to display your anger against him or her. So, anger in marriage is acceptable only when it is reasonable and fleeting. Never let your anger become a frequent occurrence in your relationship. If you really understand its devastating impact, you will easily refrain from bursting out in unwanted anger against your spouse. Did this video make you understand the impact of your anger? Did you also like the solutions offered? Marriage Realities will have many such relationship eye-openers. Subscribe to my channel to understand your marriage in a new light. Press the bell icon for updates about my latest relationship videos. Make love forever until death do us part your relationship goal.